sister-in-law called the police on me, so I refused to babysit. Now her whole life is falling apart. Hey folks. Before we dive into today's video, I could really use your help. We've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit, and one of the easiest ways you can support us is by hitting that subscribe button. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the awesome content you love. Your support means so much to us, so let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks a bunch. Now, let's get into the video. So, for years my sister-in-law Sarah and I had this babysitting deal that was just perfect. We kicked it off back in March 2020 when the pandemic threw everyone's life in a loop. She would watch my kids 3 days a week, and I'd do the same for hers. No money, no drama, it was a total win-win. We kept it smooth for 3 whole years, and if something came up, we'd just give each other a heads up like the grown-ups we are. But then, Sarah went and blew it all up over some silly argument. Seriously, I can't even remember what it was about, that's how minor it was. I thought she'd cool off after a day, so I didn't make a big deal out of it. The next morning, I dropped the kids at her place like usual. I didn't even go inside, which was normal for us if we were in a hurry or just not feeling chatty. The door opened, I waved, and off I went to work. My commute's about 40 minutes, so I just jammed out to some music, totally clueless about the storm brewing. When I finally got to work and checked my phone, my stomach just dropped. There were 20 missed calls and a ton of texts, all from Sarah. The messages started off with her saying she couldn't watch the kids that day because of our spat and then just spiraled into her nagging about me ignoring her. The last few were her threatening to call the cops if I didn't pick up the kids in 45 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I dialed her up right away, saying sorry for missing her texts and explaining my phone was on silent because, safety first. I promised to leave work early to get the kids, but she cut me off with this snarky "you've got 45 minutes or I'm calling the cops" bit. I was speechless. Who calls the cops on their own family? If anything about child abandonment went on my record, my career in working with kids would be toast, and Sarah knew that. I told her I'd leave as quickly as possible, but I needed to wrap up a few things at work first. My boss was super understanding, but I couldn't just drop everything immediately. By the time I got back to Sarah's, an hour had passed. 2 squad cars were there, lights flashing, and my kids looked terrified on the porch. I felt sick. Sarah was there, yapping to the officers like she was the victim, so smug. I got out, took a deep breath, and approached them. I wanted to yell at Sarah right then and there but knew better. Instead, I explained to the cops, "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't abandon my kids. I dropped them off here this morning, like always, but missed her text about not watching them until I was at work." One cop gave me this "yeah right" look. "No, seriously, I missed her messages cause I was driving with my phone on silent," I said, trying to stay calm. I called her as soon as I saw them and said I was on my way. Sarah chimed in, all snappy, "I told you I couldn't watch them today. Check your phone next time. This is your fault." I was boiling inside, but I held it together. "Sarah, that's not a reason to call the police on me. You know what this could have done to my career." She just shrugged, like it was nothing. The cops, clearly not wanting to be dragged into the drama, were like, "All right, seems like a communication mix-up. No crime here, so just don't let it happen again." They left, and I got my kids in the car without even glancing at Sarah. But she just had to have the last word, didn't she? "Maybe next time you'll check your phone," she yelled as I walked away. "This was your fault, not mine." I didn't answer her. I just couldn't. I'm about to spill some tea on a family drama that had me questioning everything. If I had opened my mouth, I'm sure I would have come off as bonkers. So instead, I slammed the car door, drove home, and spent the rest of the day trying to chill out. The next few days were a complete whirlwind. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened, the cops showing up, Sarah's smug grin, my kids looking all scared standing on that porch, and me having to explain everything to the police. It was infuriating. Sarah knew exactly what she was doing, how risky it was for me, and she went ahead anyway. A few days after the incident, she had the nerve to text me, saying, "I think I might have overreacted. Can we go back to the old babysitting schedule?" I stared at that message for what felt like forever, torn between replying or blocking her for good. In the end, I decided to lay it all out. "No, Sarah. We're not going back to anything. You called the cops on your own family knowing what that could mean for me, and you didn't care. So no, I'm never babysitting your kids again. Figure it out." She shot back right away, trying to pin it on me like it was my fault. "If you just checked your phone or spoken to me when you dropped them off, none of this would have happened. I warned you," she said. I couldn't believe her nerve. You're out of your mind if you think this is my fault, I fired back. You crossed a line, and I'm done with you. She kept sending messages, trying to guilt trip me into forgiving her, but I ignored her, blocked her number, and thought that was the end of it. But, spoiler alert, it wasn't. A few days later, my brother Mike called. Usually, Mike's pretty laid back, but when it involves Sarah, he's totally whipped. He started by saying he just wanted to talk, but it quickly turned into him yelling at me. "Why can't you just let this go?" he said. Sarah apologized. She knows she went too far. We're family. Are you really going to let one mistake ruin everything? One mistake? I snapped back. Mike, she called the cops on me. Do you even get what could have happened if the cops hadn't believed me? My career would have been toast, and she didn't give a damn. Mike tried to justify it by saying she was pissed, like that made it okay. You're really going to hold a grudge over this? You're screwing us over, man. Sarah had to quit her job because we can't afford childcare now. Do you even care what this is doing to us? Not my problem, I told him. You guys made your bed, now lie in it. Mike lost it, calling me selfish and saying I was destroying the family. I told him to get lost and hung up. Then, my mom called, and I knew I was in for another round of guilt tripping. Sure enough, she started with, "You're being unreasonable." Sarah apologized. Why can't you just forgive her? This isn't about an apology, Mom, I explained. She didn't just screw me over, she put my entire career at risk. Now you're trying to make me feel guilty because she's dealing with the fallout from her own actions. I'm done. Of course, she didn't get it. She said I was being childish and needed to think about how this was affecting the family. I told her I was thinking about my own family, my kids and myself, not about Sarah and Mike. And with that, I ended the call. Calling the cops on me was bad enough, but the ripple effects of that decision hit the family hard. I thought the drama couldn't get any worse after Sarah called the cops and Mike's angry calls, but I totally underestimated just how selfish and entitled those two could be. The real kicker? My mom started literally paying the price for their mess. After Sarah quit her job, she dumped her kids on my mom, who thought it was her duty to fix things. At first, I didn't care. Mom had been defending Sarah, saying I was overreacting, so I figured she'd learn her lesson soon. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. My mom started looking more and more tired every time I saw her. She complained about being exhausted but wouldn't admit she was overwhelmed. I could tell she was struggling to keep it together, but babysitting Sarah's kids 3 days a week was taking its toll. One day, I got an alarming call at work from Mom, who sounded totally out of breath. She said she didn't feel well and my stomach dropped. I told her to stay put and rushed over. When I got there, she looked pale and weak, slumped on the couch. Her chest felt tight, and she had a pounding headache, so I didn't take any chances and took her to the doctor immediately. So, my mom's blood pressure was through the roof, like dangerously high. The doctor told her she needed to chill out and avoid stress. Of course, I had a pretty good idea what was stressing her out, Sarah and her kids. But even after hearing this, Mom wouldn't blame Sarah. They're my grandkids, she said when I mentioned it. I can't just stop helping. I tried to keep my cool and told her, helping is one thing, but letting them walk all over you is another. It's Sarah and Mike's job to take care of their kids, not yours. She just sighed and didn't say much. I could tell she wasn't ready to confront them, but I sure was ready to step in. Next time Sarah came by to drop off her kids, I happened to be at Mom's place. I swung by to check on her, and Sarah showed up, all smiles, like she wasn't leaving her problems with a sick woman. "Hi Mom," she chirped, ushering her kids in. "I'll pick them up around 6 o'clock. I stepped in before my mom could even reply. "Actually, no, you won't," I said, crossing my arms. Sarah looked totally shocked. "What do you mean?" she asked, sounding defensive. "I mean, you're not leaving your kids here anymore," I said. "Mom just got back from the doctor because of her blood pressure. She doesn't need to babysit your kids while you take it easy at home." Sarah got all defensive, saying she's not just sitting around, she's handling things while Mike works. I shot back, "Yeah, I get it. But it's still your problem to solve, not Mom's." My mom tried to step in, like, "Ashley, let's discuss this later." But I was like, "No, we can't let this slide anymore, Mom. You've been bending over backward, and look where it's gotten you, at the doctor's office." Meanwhile, Sarah was fuming. "You don't get to decide that," she hissed. "This is between me and Mom." "Yeah, right," I said. "You're risking her health, and I'm not letting that happen." Sarah stormed out with the kids, muttering about me ruining everything. Did I care? Nope. For a second, I thought maybe she'd wake up after our confrontation, but nope, she just showed up next week like nothing happened. Mom later called me, apologizing for not standing up to Sarah. "I just don't know how to say no," she said, sounding upset. I told her, "Mom, you've got to stop letting her manipulate you. She won't stop until you put your foot down." Mom was like, "But what about the kids? They didn't ask for this." I reminded her, "You can love them without letting Sarah walk all over you." The real breaking point was a week later when Mom ended up back in the hospital. Her blood pressure was bad again, and the doctor was serious about making changes or risking a stroke. Seeing her hooked up to monitors broke me. When Mike showed up to pick up the kids, I couldn't hold back. I confronted him right there in the hospital. "You and Sarah are hurting Mom," I told him. "If you leave your kids with her again, I'll call the cops." He rolled his eyes, saying I was being dramatic. I snapped back, "Mom's too nice to say no, and you're taking advantage of that. It's time you two figured out parenting yourselves." Mike started yelling about how I was making things worse, and I just told him I didn't care. That night, I sat down with Mom and told her she had to stop babysitting. "I love you, Mom, but you've done more than enough. You need to put yourself first," she cried but finally got it. She agreed to tell Sarah and Mike she couldn't babysit anymore. I knew it'd be a fight, but I didn't care. They needed to step up and deal with their own lives. You'd think they'd get it after the hospital trip, but nope, they acted like Mom was betraying them when she finally said no. Sarah had a total meltdown, going on about how hard everything was for her. Hey, so here's the lowdown on what went down with Mike, Sarah, and my mom. As usual, Mike got all passive-aggressive when Mom said she'd help him out. He called me up, totally furious, trying to make it seem like it was my fault that Mom wasn't on their side anymore. "You happy now?" he snapped. "Mom won't help because you had to get involved." I fired back, "Yeah, I am happy because now she won't end up in the hospital again, thanks to you and Sarah's nonsense." Mike was like, "She wants to help, you're making it harder for everyone." I countered, "No, Mike, you're the one making it harder. You and Sarah are super lazy and expect everyone else to do everything. Mom nearly had a stroke because of you too, and you still act like you're the victims. Grow up." He hung up on me, but honestly, I couldn't care less. I was over trying to reason with him. If he and Sarah wanted to keep digging their own graves, that was their problem. A few days later, Mom called me, sounding nervous, which instantly put me on edge. "Ashley, Sarah dropped the kids off again," she said, her voice shaky. I was furious. "Mom, you told her you couldn't do it anymore." "I did," she said quietly, "but she just left them here and said she'd be back later." That was it for me. I called Sarah, and when she didn't pick up, typical, I left her a voicemail. "You've got 45 minutes to pick up your kids, or I'm calling the cops. And unlike you, I'm not bluffing." I was shaking with anger when I hung up, but it felt good to stand up to her. Sarah showed up about 30 minutes later, storming in and yelling about how unreasonable I was. "You wouldn't actually call the cops on me," she shouted. "I just said, try me. You were happy to do it to me, so why shouldn't I?" She kept going on about how I was overreacting, but I just stared at her until she took her kids and left. Mom looked horrified, but I felt no guilt. Someone had to stand up to Sarah, and if it had to be me, so be it. Of course, Mike called that night, yelling, "What is wrong with you? You're really threatening to call the cops now?" I shot back, "Oh, it's a problem now? Maybe you should have thought about that when Sarah did the same to me." He tried to defend her, saying she was upset, but I told him, "Well, now I'm upset, and I mean it. You two are a disaster, and I'm not letting you drag Mom or me down. You're tearing this family apart," he shouted. "No, Mike, you and Sarah are doing that all on your own," I said and hung up. The next week, Sarah tried her usual routine, dropping the kids off without asking. This time, I went straight to the police. I reported an issue of abandonment, explaining that the kids were left with a sick elderly woman who couldn't care for them. When the officers showed up, Sarah was livid, storming into Mom's house, blaming me. "You're ruining my family," she screamed. "No, Sarah, you're doing that yourself," I replied calmly. The officers made her take her kids and warned her not to leave them with someone who couldn't care for them. Her face was priceless. She wanted to argue but knew better than to push it further. After that, Sarah and Mike stopped involving my mom, but their problems were just beginning. Sarah struggled to handle the kids alone, and Mike was working overtime. Their marriage was strained, and Mike even started crashing at Mom's house, making things awkward. Mom was upset about the family falling apart, but I reminded her that this wasn't her fault. "This isn't your job to fix, I told her. She nodded, but she still felt torn because she's too kind for her own good. Even she started to see that Sarah and Mike were a lost cause. After the police visit, Sarah and Mike finally seemed to get the message and didn't dump the kids at mom's anymore, but the fallout was already in full swing. Sarah was stuck at home struggling, and Mike was swamped with work to make ends meet. So, here's the deal. The bills were stacking up, and the cracks in Mike and Sarah's marriage were getting bigger every single day. So, when my mom dropped the news that Mike was crashing at her place some nights because he needed space from the constant drama with Sarah, I wasn't even surprised. My mom tried to play it cool, acting like it was no biggie, but I could totally see she was stressed. She kept saying stuff like, "I just want everyone to get along, and families shouldn't be like this." I love her to bits, but I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Like, come on, Mom, this isn't about just getting along. Mike and Sarah made their bed, and now they're lying in it. This mess is on them, not us. But then my mom's voice got all shaky when she said, "But Ashley, what if they can't make it work? What if it breaks their family?" I sighed and told her, if their family is falling apart, it's because they won't own up to their actions. You can't keep trying to fix everything for them. Meanwhile, Sarah started spreading her side of the story to anyone who'd listen. According to her, I was the jerk who wouldn't help out my own family. She conveniently left out the part where she called the cops on me. Instead, she painted herself as this struggling mom just trying to do her best while I selfishly turned my back. The story spread like wildfire, and I started getting calls from extended family asking, "Why can't you just help them out?" One aunt even said, "It's not like you're doing anything wrong, but you're making their lives so much harder." "Oh, I'm making their lives harder?" I snapped back, "Did Sarah tell you she called the cops on me? Because that's why we're here." The silence on the other end was kinda satisfying, I won't lie. No way was I gonna let her twist the story and make me the bad guy. Things hit a boiling point about a month later when Mike showed up at my mom's place in the middle of the night. He was completely wasted and rambling about how he couldn't take it anymore. And yeah, I'd already warned my mom not to let him stay there, but she's too soft-hearted and couldn't say no. When I found out the next morning, I called him up ready to explode. "What the heck is wrong with you, Mike? Showing up at mom's house like that? She doesn't need this." "You don't understand," he slurred, obviously still hungover. "Sarah's driving me nuts. She's always complaining about how hard things are, and I'm busting my butt to keep us afloat." I shot back, "Well, maybe if you two had your act together, you wouldn't be in this mess. But hey, keep blaming everyone else. That's been working great for you so far." He started yelling, but I hung up before he could finish. I wasn't gonna waste any more energy on him. The final straw was a few weeks later when Sarah quit her job for good. She was holding on to a part-time gig, but between the cost of childcare and her struggles managing her kids, she threw in the towel. Mike picked up more hours, but it still wasn't enough. Their bills were towering, and whatever savings they might have had were gone. My mom told me they were considering moving back in with Sarah's parents, who live several hours away. "They don't have many options left," she said, sounding genuinely upset. "Good," I said bluntly. "Maybe they'll figure out how to handle their mess without dragging everyone else down with them." She didn't say anything back, but I knew she was still holding on to hope that things might turn around. I didn't share her optimism. People like Sarah and Mike don't change unless they're forced to, and even then, it's a long shot. A few weeks later, Mike called me. "We're moving," he said, "thanks for nothing." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're welcome," I replied, and hung up. Now, Sarah and Mike are out of the picture. They moved back with Sarah's folks, and last I heard, their relationship is barely holding together. I'd be lying if I said I felt bad for them. They brought this on themselves, and I'm not losing sleep over it. My mom seems happier now that she's not babysitting or dealing with their chaos. She still talks about how sad it is that the family fell apart, but I remind her it's not our job to fix people who don't want to be fixed. As for me, I've made peace with the whole situation. Don't think my relationship with Mike and Sarah will ever recover, but honestly, I'm cool with that. Some folks need to hit rock bottom to learn anything, and even then, they might not change. At the end of the day, I have my own family to focus on, and that's where my energy goes. If Sarah and Mike want to keep playing the victim card, they can do it without me. I'm out.